this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make two really simple projects with the treasure bag. Of course, as usual, you do not have to have the treasure bag to make these projects. You can get stuff out of your stash. Just use the techniques that I show you and make something similar. But I'm going to show you how to do a stretch bracelet and with the ovals that are in the bag, and then I'm going to show you how to make this really pretty necklace. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the pendant a little bit here. And this is what we're going to make. Like I said, very basic, very simple techniques and projects that you can use with any of your stash. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to play with the Spring Splendor treasure bag here. Of course, if you don't have the treasure bag, you can always use these techniques for something you have in your own stash, or just draw inspiration from it and do something similar but completely different at the same time, whatever you want to do. But what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this silver metal leaf thing here that we have in the treasure bag. I'm going to use that. I want to use one of the pendants, so I'm going to use the green one. There was 3 that came in your treasure bag, and I do have some of those on the website, so if you want some. And then we're going to use the 8x6 dark cyan crystal beads. And I still have some of these puffy geometrical type of rondelles too. I'm going to use a few of those, I think. We'll see how it goes in to the design. And then some of the 4mm round spacer beads. I'm going to use one of the clasps that came in the treasure bag. And I'm going to use some size 2 beadle-on crimp tubes. So this is adding to the treasure bag. And then I'm going to use a couple of jump rings. So I've got a fairly fine jump ring, and it's about 8mm in diameter, and it's probably about a 22 gauge. And then I've got about a 3 to 4mm jump ring here. And so I'll be using those. And then I've cut 2 pieces about 10 inches long each of medium soft flex. And we'll be using that. And I think I'm just going to put together a design and basically do some stringing here. So the techniques, like I said, are very basic, and you can do this with anything. So let's go ahead and get started with this project. What I'm going to do is I want to put this pendant on this pendant. So I've kind of figured in my head a little way I'm going to try to do here and see if it works. So let's get you a little closer. Let me rearrange my camera some and get you in. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this 8mm jump ring. And I'm going to open it rather wide. So here's my opening right here. I'm putting my pliers on either side, and I'm just going to twist it open pretty wide. And then I'm going to try to put it through this pendant here on these 2 upper holes. So if you look, I'm not going to use the actual loop. I'm going to go into this hole and this hole from the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and then here, hooking my jump ring in there like that, and then I'm going to close my jump ring. And it takes a pretty good size one, or you won't be able to get through. At least that's what I surmised, and it seems to be working fine. So I just want to make sure that's shut really well. And then, as you can see, I've turned the opening towards the back, and I have this side towards the front now, the solid side. And I'm just going to grab my pendant, and I'm going to put the small jump ring on the pendant. So it has a little loop here too, and it's not positioned correctly for it to hang right on my my other pendant. So I'm going to put a jump ring on it and hook it here so that it'll hang correctly. So I just opened this tiny little jump ring. I'm going to put it on here, and then I'm going to pick up this one, and let me get you in just a little closer. I'm going to pick up this one, push that forward with my fingers, hook this one onto that one. Let's see if I can balance all this without making it fling across the room here. Try to position myself so I can close this jump ring. Did I get it closed? I think so.
And let me see how that works. Oh, yeah, that turned out good.
So, I might have been in too close, but all I did was hook that little jump ring into the bigger jump ring and closed it, and now I have a double layer type of pendant here, and I think that's really pretty. Okay, so now that we have this prepared, I want to make the necklace portion that goes up around the neck, and I'm going to make them in 2 separate wires here because of the way this loop is positioned and the fact that I want to utilize this loop. You could put a jump ring on it and then just string the jump ring on, but I'd like to utilize this and have kind of a V shape here. So what I'm going to do is I've taken one of my pieces of medium soft flex. You can use whatever beading wire you have available, and that will be fine. We're going to pick up, I have a size 2 beadle-on crimp tube. I'm going to put it on to my beading wire, and then I'm just going to put this put the beading wire through the loop on the pendant, and then I am going to bring this wire through the crimp tube. String it through here. And I'll pull the longer portion of the wires so that I don't lose a lot of my wire. So if you pull the shorter portion, then you're going to have a big piece that you have to cut off. So pull the longer one, and then try to position these in here to where they're nice and neat and hang nice. Now, when I'm connecting to something like this, I don't always try to get my wires parallel, because if you do that, a lot of times it'll flip around funny. So I just get it in here laying the way it wants to lay and look nice. And then I make sure that I have enough room for this to move around. So my loop is about the right size, make it just a little bit smaller. And then I'm just going to grab my crimping tool, and I'm going to guess where those 2 wires are separate. And like I said, I'm not really concentrating too hard on making sure they're parallel. If they cross a little, that's fine. I'm going to hold it to where my wires look like they're going to lay nicely, like this, and then I'm just going to crimp it in the second divot on my crimping tool. So the divot closest to the handle is where you're going to crimp that, and you can see I have crimped mine now, and I have a little V fold here, and I did get them pretty parallel to each other. And then I'm going to grab my crimp tool again, and in this first divot closest to the tip of the crimping tool, so right there, I'm going to place that crimp tube in sideways so that the 2 little tubes that are around my beading wire now and separating my beading wire by the fold in the middle, I'm going to make sure those 2 sides are touching my crimping tool in that first divot, and I'm going to squeeze. And then I'm just going to reduce it a little bit by putting it back in the tool in that first divot and just kind of reduce it down like this. And then I'm just going to grab my scissors. Now this is attached, you can see it's attached. I am going to grab my wire cutters actually, and I'm going to cut this off really close to that crimp tube. Crimp tube is very secure now. I'm going to cut this off really close. And then I'm going to grab one of my 4mm round beads here and see if that'll drop over that crimp tube. If it doesn't, we can always get a crimp tube cover or just leave it. Either way would be fine. Let's see if I can drop this over it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Let me try a different one. If one doesn't work, sometimes another one will. These holes are pretty good size, so let me see if I can drop one over that. Nope, but you know, that doesn't really look bad, so I'm just going to leave that like that. So I thought maybe it would drop over, and maybe it would if I went back and kind of squished it down, but I'm using medium soft flex, so it's not going to reduce really far down. So I'm just going to leave it like that. That looks okay. You can put a crimp tube cover over that too if you want, but my bead falls down over it enough to where it doesn't look bad. And my crimping was nice and neat, so it looks okay. And then I'm just going to string a pattern of beads on here. I think I started with the 4mm round. I think I want to put in
2 of my big rondelles. And then I think you could do a spacer. You could do some seed beads in here too if you want, but I think I'm going to put them together. And then I'm going to do 2 4mm rounds. And then I'm going to drop one of these beads down. And then, is that how I want to do that? Let me see. Maybe, just maybe, I'll make it more narrow. I'll put like 3 4mm rounds on first. Let's see what that looks like. Make it more narrow. And bring this back over here where it goes here. And then, see what I mean about after you crimp, it can pop around funny. Once I get it beaded and it's laying with its own weight, it should be fine, but that's what happens sometimes when you worry too much about getting it parallel. And then we're going to pick up one of the 8x6s, and then maybe one of these, and then maybe one of these. And then I think I will go ahead and put a couple more spacer beads. Maybe like 4. And then I'm going to put, I like 5 of my rondelles on there. Well, I put 3 instead of 5, but that's okay. Or whatever I said I was going to do, I put 3. I think I said 4.
But you know, it just kind of does what it wants to do, and I just follow along. So, let's see, 4, 5, and 3 of my spacers. Then I'm just, you can do any pattern you want, however you want. I'm just doing a really simple, really easy, fly by the seat of my pants design here, and trying to make something that will just be kind of elegant and simple, can be dressed up or down type of necklace. This is the kind of necklace that you'll grab for. Just a real simple, pretty design here. And so, let me continue doing this. I'm just stringing this on here. As you can see, I'm going to finish this end, or finish my stringing, show you what I have in my pattern when I come back, and we'll end this side, and then we'll just do the same thing on the other side. So I'll be right back. Okay, so here's what I've done. I've done my 3 spacing beads, and then my combination of the green rondelles and the other type of rondelle, and then 3 spacers and 5 of the green rondelles. And then I repeated that twice. And then on the very end, I just did 5 rondelles and 3 spacers, just like that. And now I've left myself just enough room to put my clasping on. Now you can always put a little bit less if you need more room to manipulate to get your crimp bead on. Then you can always just put like 1 of these spacers on the end too. Or cut a longer piece of wire, however you want to do it. But I'm going to drop a crimp tube down on here now, and then I'm going to pick up my clasping and drop it down. And because of the way this is laying, I'm going to let this slide over to this side of the necklace and then do the other half. So I think I'm going to put this end on, because I like this end on this side of the necklace. So I'm going to put this end on. If you do your first strand and it feels like it wants to go to the other side of your loop, let it go, and then do your other side on the other side. That's what I'm going to do, because it just keeps popping over there, so I'm just going to let it go. So now I'm taking the end of my wire, and I'm going to go through this little spacer, or this little crimp tube right here, and push it through.
And you can go through the first bead if you'd like to. I like to do that simply because it keeps it from being so pokey. But however,
I don't have a lot of wire, so I'm just going through the crimp tube just like this. Get you a little closer.
So I've just gone through the crimp tube. I'm going to try to organize this to where my wires are sitting side by side
like this, so that they're parallel inside that crimp tube. I'm going to get my crimp pliers, and in the second divot here, I am going to place it right in the middle of where I think those two wires are, and I'm going to squeeze. And now I have encased both the wires in a little tube on the crimp tube. And now I'm going to use the first divot, and I'm going to go into crimp on that first divot there, making sure the tubes that I created are touching the crimping plier, so it's sideways, the crimp tube is sideways in my plier, and then I'm just going to squeeze. My clasp got in the way. Let me do that again. There we go. And now I have a really nice little crimp. Now let me just say something about crimp tools. I found this is a beadsmith. I've been using it for literally years and it works great. I had purchased on Amazon something a little cheaper simply because I thought, well, I'll have a couple of these on hand, and they don't work worth a darn. So if you're having a problem crimping, it might be your tool. So this is a beadsmith. It's the original type of crimping tool. I've had it for years and it works perfectly all the time with beadle-on size 2 or 1s. Well, 1s I use a micro crimper, but size 1s or excuse me, size 2s or 3s, it works great. So you may not be doing something wrong. It just may be your tool. So make sure, because I've been crimping for years and I always get my crimp just fine. However, when I tried those tools, it did not work. Let me see if I can find it and I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like it's this tool here, but it has this weird little scrunchy thing here. And it's not the same thing. It doesn't work the same way. I can't get a proper crimp with it. It doesn't squeeze down on my crimp tube properly so that I can actually get my first half of my crimp and then my second half. So it very well could be your crimping tool. Now, there's also crimping tools like this. I use these as a needle nose plier, but it also works really well. It has a couple of different sizes of the round part to reduce your crimp, and this works really well too. And this is a Xuron, and it was purchased on Amazon. So this works and this works, but something that looks like this doesn't always work. Anyway, that's just a hint because I have a lot of people complaining about crimping. And so now this is what I have. Let me back off a little. This is what I have. Now I'm just going to grab my second wire, and I'm going to just push this one to the side, and I'm going to pick up a crimp tube onto my wire and do the same thing. So I'm just going to run this through here. Give yourself plenty of wire to do this with, because you can always pull the longer wire. Now you can see I have my crimp tube in my hand here. I'm just going to push this through. Push it down. And then I'm going to pull this longer wire. And I'm going to try to get it about the same size as my original loop. Let me get you closer. So you can see it's a little bigger. So I'll pull the longer wire until I get it, now it's too small, until I get it about the same size. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's pretty good right there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and crimp this. So I'm going to grab a hold of my crimping tool. Then again, I'm going to see if I lost any of my tension on my loop. Make sure it's the size I want, and I'm just going to squeeze. And you can see there, I didn't line it up perfectly, but the reason I didn't is because now it'll move correctly on here. Let me get this so where you can see it. And it's actually not too bad. It's pretty close to being parallel. It is parallel. They're just close together. And then I'm going to squish this in. And now
me turn this over. This wire actually lays right
and it doesn't keep popping over. So sometimes you'll have a problem with it popping around if you are really trying to position those wires a certain way. Sometimes they just want to lay the way they want to lay. As long as you can get a nice tight crimp, you're okay. So go ahead and string this side the same way you did this side. Put on the other end of clasping just like I showed you. And I will come back when I am done and show you the necklace. Okay, so I have decided on the ends of my necklace where I've done my clasping to go ahead and put some crimp tube covers, simply because, as you can see on this end, these beads did drop over my crimp tubes as I was working, which is fine, but they want to slide up over this on this end, which is kind of messing with the way my beads are laying together. It's giving extra slack because it pops up over that crimp tube, and that's not how I designed it to lay, and now it'll have too much extra space. You always want a little bit of slack between your beads, but not a lot, because then it kind of looks strange. And it was impeding the way my clasping was working, so I just decided on the very ends to put some crimp tube covers. Now, these crimp tube covers look like little roly-polies. You can get them at any bead supply place. You can get them at Hobby Lobby, wherever. And this is a medium size, and I am just going to place it in. Now, this is a mighty crimper. So this is a crimping tool that's made for big crimps, like size 4, and for crimp tubes and for cord ends and things like that. Works really great. You don't have to have one. You can do this with a regular pair of flat nose or chain nose pliers, but this works great. So I can place it in that first divot, the bigger divot. So the second one is where you crimp, and the first one is where you kind of cinch it all together. We're putting it in that first divot closest to the tip of the tool. And then I'm just going to pick up my piece and I'm going to slide it over. Now this is a little hard for me because my forefinger is crippled, so it's a little clumsy for me. So just kind of put up with me, I'm sorry, but I can't really use it very well. So it takes me a minute. And I just slide it over. Of course, you can put it on without it being in the crimp tool, but that's hard for me too. Come on, finger. There we go. So anyway, however you slide it on, just slide it over the crimp tube like this. And then I just take my mighty crimper and put it back in the tool in that first divot and squeeze. And then I'll come around and squeeze again. And just squeeze until I've cinched it together pretty well, like this. And then you have a really nice looking bead at the end instead of a crimp tube. And for this, it's holding my necklace together the way I want it to, so that I don't have a bunch of slack. And it's also holding these in position over the crimp tubes on the bottom, since they've decided to fall over it. So as you're designing, if something like that comes up, you can always do something else to make it work. So that's what I did to make that work. And I want you to see this necklace. I put it on before I put my covers on here, and it just looks really pretty. It hangs just right. I'll measure it for you, but I want you to see what it looks like at this point. This is what it looks like, and it hangs just right, and it's really, really pretty. Simple, just really simple. Simple to make, simple design, and I will grab this and wear it whenever I'm wearing something that it will go nice with, and it would be easy to wear and always look really nice. Let's see. Whoops. I don't know what that was, guys. I'm just kicking stuff over. And then, let's see. So this is about, let me get my longer. This is exactly a 20-inch necklace, the way I've designed it. So if you do yours the same way with the same beads, you're going to get a 20-inch necklace. And that's what that looks like. And I think I'll make a couple more things. Be right back. Okay, so I have decided to use the big oval beads in the treasure bag to make a stretch bracelet because I think these oval beads turn out really pretty in a stretch type bracelet. So I'm going to use those. Of course, you can do this with any beads you want as long as your beading cord, your stretch cord, will go through the holes. And I double it in this method that I'm going to show you, so you want to make sure that it'll go through the holes well as it's doubled. So this is what we're going to use. I'm going to use 8 of these. Now you can use 10 if you want like an 8-inch bracelet. I'm going to use 8 for a 7-inch bracelet. You can use 7 for a 6-inch bracelet. I am also going to put some 4mm spacer beads in between, so you have those in your treasure bag also. Then I'm going to use some Stretch Magic, and you can use any stretch cord you want. This is a 0.5mm, and I also tried it with a 0.8mm, which is quite a bit thicker, and it worked well except for the fact that it's a little bit harder to pull through the beads. So I'm going to try it with this. This should work fine, and that just gives you a reference. You can use what you have on hand also, as long as it goes through your beads. I'm also going to be using a big eye needle. Now, a big eye needle is just that. It's a huge eye. Usually they're really tight together. I stick my beading needle in the middle and separate them because my fingernails won't let me, and just kind of open it like that. So that's a big eye needle. What I do is I keep one big eye needle for stretch bracelets, and I cut off the end. So you can see this is closed on both ends, this big eye needle. It's closed on both ends. And normally you'd leave it like that. But for the stretch bracelet, I cut off the very end so that I just have a V that looks like this. It's open. Now, if you don't have one of these to do this with, don't fret. You can use a piece of beading cording. And of course, you'd want to cut the two ends the same. I didn't do that. But basically, all you do is just kink it. So this is tiger's tail. Tiger's tail kinks really well. You could use anything. You could use a thin beadle-on 7 or something. It doesn't kink all that well, but you could wrap it around and hold it together and use it also. But this is also an alternative. And like I said, you would cut these two ends flush here, and that will work also. I'm going to have a little clip out so that I can keep my beads from falling off as I do this. And I'm just going to begin. Also, you're going to need a little jewelry glue. You can use E6000, you can use super glue, whatever you would like. I've got it all over my hands because I opened it to make sure that it was coming out, and it exploded on me. Not to mention, I've been digging around in my garden, and so my manicure has taken a beating, and I'm sorry, I know they look awful. The edges of them are all dark and stuff. But you know, sometimes you got to do other stuff. So, some glue, some cord, stretch cord, a needle that will work for you, either a piece of beading wire or a big eye needle, and your beads and clip. So let's get going. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this cord. I have cut 20 inches just to make sure as I double it, I'm going to have more than enough to make the bracelet that I want to make, the length I want to make it. I'm going to bend it in half here. I'm just going to kind of stretch it out a little bit to start with so that I get some of the give out of it. And then I am going to take my big eye needle, and where is he? And I'm just going to open it because, like I said, I cut the end off. And I'm just going to slide this down in the middle, make sure that both ends of my cord are together so that I'm centered on this stretch cord the best I can. May not be perfect, but just as long as it's close. That's close enough. So this is what I have now. I have my cording on my little big eye needle thing, and then I am going to put my clip on this end, just like that, just so it holds my beads. And then I'm going to start sliding my beads on. Make sure that your cording is even on both sides. You don't have a bunch of slack on one side. And then I'm going to pick up I'm going to start with a 4mm bead, and I'm just going to pull it down, and then I'm going to put on this. And see, this slides much better. The first one I did was a little bit more difficult.
And I'm just going to go ahead and alternate my beads, putting these on. Kind of check out these beads. Some of them are the electroplating is a little scraped. So pick out good ones. And then slide them on here. And just keep sliding them down until you have, I'm going to use 8. So I'll use all of my 8 with a
4mm spacer bead in between. I'm starting with a spacer bead and I'll end with a big bead so that my bracelet is uniform. So I'm going to go ahead and continue stringing these on. When I have all of them on, I'll be back. Now, as you can see, I've put all of my beads on, and I put on 8 of them. And this is just a tiny bit over 7 inches. So that's about right for me. That's a medium size. Now, if you want to make a smaller one, you'll go around 6. So you can go a little bit over 6. And if you want to make a big one or a large size, you go a little over 8 inches. I'm talking not beads, I'm talking inches. So I have measured this, and like I said, this is a little over 7 inches. Now I have my big eye needle over here. I am just going to, because I can open it up and I can just slide it off. Make sure that you don't slide your beads down prematurely and they slide off the end of your loop. Just hold on to your loop and then slide these beads down. Make sure you've started with a small bead and you've ended with a big bead here. Take the clip off the end, and then I'm going to grab this end, make sure that I don't lose my little loop, and I am going to come down here so you can see. I'm going to grab one end of this end, so you can split them apart. Grab one end and just thread it through the loop on this end. And once you've done that, hold on to these two on this end and just start moving your beads down so that that little loop kind of slides in. Just like that. And just pull on both sides, holding on to both sides, and just pull on them. And get the slack out of the line. And then now you have your bracelet cinched together like this, and you can tie a knot. So I'm just going to take both ends and I'm going to tie a knot. Oh, come here. And slide this down, making sure that I don't have any slack, that I have decent tension. And then I'm going to do it a couple more times just to make sure I have a really nice secure bracelet here. So I'm tying about 3 of them. You can tie 3 or 4, 5 if you want. It does not matter. Just make sure that you have enough of them tied. And now you can spread your bracelet apart here. Take the 2 ends and just move them out of your way. See if I can get my knot here. And I like to hold it just out like this over my finger, and I'm going to make a mess, get it on my hands, but I'm going to grab some glue. So I've got this jewelry glue here. And I'm just going to dab some on here, on this little knot, just like this. This is kind of thick and gelled, so it's not running all over my hands, though I will get some on my hands. And then I'm going to slide that little bead over the glue, and then I'm going to take a little cloth and wipe it. But I want this little 4mm bead to go over that knot, and then I'm going to grab my cutters, wherever they might be here. Of course, they're not nearby. Let me see if I can find something else. Oh, Gina, you're never prepared. Hang on one second, guys. Okay, so I've got some cutters now. These are not the ones I wanted, but I'm going to cut real close here, but not on top of the knot. Just leave a little bit of a tail, and then just kind of pull that into that bead too. Maybe I left a little too much. I'm going to cut that down a little bit more. And now I have a perfect little bracelet. I'm going to let that dry for a minute and then I'll put it on and show you what it looks like. And here are the projects we made today. And I just want to show you what the bracelet looks like on. So get it on there nice. And that's what that looks like on. The necklace looks really pretty on too. So just two really simple, fast moving, easy projects that are very wearable for every day and just kind of fun. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.